Aaliyah Miller, we had her on the podcast last night. Definitely an honor and a privilege to have her on the show, share some words of wisdom, a day in the life of a student athlete. Oftentimes you get athletes that excel in their sport, but they don't necessarily excel in the classroom. So it was very refreshing to have a student athlete that was excelling uh, in and out of their sport, if that makes sense. We got Obi Eziadi coming on, running for city council. Hey, how you doing, Obi?
Can you hear me?
No, I can't. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to hop on Heavy Brand Podcast. Appreciate you.
Thank you. How do you say your name? Is it Gerard?
Yes, sir, Gerard.
How you doing, Gerard?
Pretty good, pretty good. Can't complain. This is season 2 for me for this podcast. When we first started, it was kind of to open up a platform for at-risk youth in Detroit. I grew up in Detroit, and I kind of wanted something to keep the youth motivated and engaged throughout the start of the pandemic. And then, based on the guests that started coming on the podcast, it kind of took off after that. So we just decided to keep it going, keep educating, keep inspiring the youth now, not just in Detroit, but in Denver, Colorado, and in other cities pretty much around the map now.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good service, man.
Yes, sir.
I think we need
So
that.
now, Obi, introduce yourself to the people, and after you introduce yourself to the people, we want to know who is Obi Eziadi.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks again for having me. My name is Obi Ezeadi. I'm a first generation American, son of Nigerian immigrants.
Are you
I
Igbo?
Igbo, that's right.
Okay, okay.
Where are you from?
Originally from Ghana.
Ghana. Okay. Yeah. Good knowledge of the Igbo. So I grew up in deep poverty in New Jersey, and what I saw there, it's hard to forget, right? When we went homeless for a weekend, it became really bad. There was violence, there was drugs, crime. Our educational systems were ripped apart, defunded, right? City councilors were rich. They drove nice cars, right? And growing up seeing that, I also went through, I'm a survivor of police brutality, at 10 years old, and I could talk about that in a second if you want. But like there is a lot of hardships that I went through, and the reason why I'm running for office today, so fast forward, I got my education, I got my master's in finance and marketing. I
The
worked in
Scarlet Knight.
Scarlet Knight, that's right.
Okay.
Rutgers, yeah. So I went to Rutgers, um, and working through that, I worked in many different industries after college: healthcare, transportation, technology, hospitality, etc. And the level of success that I've achieved personally, what I'm trying to do now is translate that to community advancement, right? To to ensure that I don't forget where I come from, number one. But most importantly, I know that there's millions of kids and adults who are still trapped, like I was, right? Trapped in those situations, who can't get out, who aren't as lucky as I was, because it takes luck. There's a lot of luck in there, right? To to escape that reality. And seeing Westminster today. So I live in Westminster. I'm running for city council of Westminster, and there are a lot of those same traits that you kind of see bubbling up, right? So you can see the steps forward, and see that if we don't address the income inequality in the city, we might end up in a really bad place years from now, right? And it's not just about the working poor, but also the middle class and the upper middle class. Um, there are lots of needs that their needs are not being met as well, right? So to me, the reason why I'm running is because we need to ensure that the council that there's a two-way communication between the council and the people, and that's all people. And without that, that's where things break down. That's where you have silo thinking. That's where you stop innovating. That's when you stop understanding and truly understanding and reflecting the diversity of the city, right? Westminster has had one Black councillor in 110 years. It was incorporated in 1911, Gerard. 110 years, one Black councillor. He's no longer alive. And we've had two Hispanic councillors. The city is a third Hispanic.
Wow.
So 1/3 of the city is Latino, yet we've only had two in the same time period. So there's a problem there, right? So there's something going on, and I think it's time for more diverse youth to enter government and to get engaged, to get empowered, because that's the only way to bring in progressive values, to make change, to make transformative change. So that's why I'm running, man.
That's inspiring, within itself, even with the short soundbite. Now, in a previous episode, actually one of our early episodes on this podcast, we had a former NBA star Craig Hodges on the show, and I asked Craig Hodges, for a while, the term athlete started to develop a negative connotation, and I asked him, what do we do in order to take that negative connotation out of the word athlete? So for you, Obi, I'm going to ask you, how do we take the negative connotation out of politics?
You shake the tree and let the dead leaves fall, right? Like,
excellent.
You disrupt everything, or from all the industries right now are getting disrupted, right? It's what they call it in the technology world. But politics, why is that any different? We see what's happening. Black people are getting killed every day. Not just Black people, low income people are getting killed every day, right? People lost jobs with the pandemic. We need economic recovery, right? So who's bringing people up? Who's actually thinking of everyone and not just the elite, right? Who's thinking of the 99%? That's not that one, the 1% that owns all the wealth in the country. All the middle class, all the lower, the low income. That's what we need. We need new, fresh thoughts, fresh perspectives, and that only can come from new people, youth, for sure. We need to engage and empower the youth to come into the process. The way to take out that connotation is by shaking that tree, man. And when you shake the tree, the dead leaves will fall, and what will remain are the good ones, right? There are lots of good people in government. There are lots of them. It's just that we don't know about them because outreach is also a problem, right? There's poor outreach from government to the people. It's very outdated. It's old guard, right? It's it's committees and strategic plans that you and I know that there's modernized ways of communicating with people, and that's where you need to meet the people where they are. That's the key. It's micro targeting to people's specific needs and preferences, right? Like 18 to 24 age range, they care about certain things. They don't care about more than half of the things that 60 to 80 would care about. We need to pay attention to that and do the work to reach out the right way.
That's that's well put, well said. Now, salt and sugar pretty much looks the same, right? Now, it even feels the same. Right. So, the difference pretty much becomes noticeable after the taste. Now, there's going to be some spots opening up, and I believe it's November. November is November the election?
No, November 2nd, and everyone gets their ballots the second week of October.
So now, what's going to separate you from let's say another candidate? When you have salt and sugar, from the outside looking in, the citizens of Westminster, especially those that are, pretty much kind of on the fence on who to choose. What makes you stand out? What makes you the most qualified?
Well, I think what makes me stand out is I probably have the most experience in terms of a wide variety of experience, right? Not just personal, and that's important, personal experience, but also professional experience that covers the spectrum of what the city needs, whether it's transportation, whether it's healthcare, whether it's knowledge of strategy and how we strategize over the next 5 to 10 years. That's important. Technology, how do we modernize the city? There's a lot of needs to fix our infrastructure, right? Modernize our infrastructure. How do we address climate change? It's a big issue, right? Like there are many kind of categories of problems that we have that can be fixed with my background and my expertise. And back to the personal experience, I've actually lived through hardships, like I mentioned, right? And that's a big deal. People um, need to be led, or people want to be led by people who understand what they're going through. You know, if you've always lived an upper middle class life your entire life, why should someone believe you versus someone like me who has experienced homelessness, right?
Right.
when,
Right.
when when I say we need to fix homelessness, it comes from a sense of um experience. It comes from that. Is a more honest route, right? And it makes me more passionate about it. So I believe that that kind of diversity of experience really lends itself to diversity of thought, you know, and compassionate leadership and fresh perspectives. So that's probably a differentiator. And I look the way I look. That's probably a big differentiator too, Gerard.
I appreciate your transparency, and your honesty. That's very refreshing. Now, when I was in the military, when I was coming out the Marine Corps, a huge issue was um, PTSD awareness and being able to make mental health mental health services accessible to veterans. So that was a very pressing issue. That was like the hot button topic when I was coming out of the Marine Corps. If you could select one hot button topic specifically for the city of Westminster, literally like as far as what you would start off with, um, if you become a city council member, what topic would that be, Obi?
I believe the hot button topic right now is water,
Okay.
right? So 40, 50 years ago, we installed new infrastructure for our water systems, right? Since then, multiple councils have kind of neglected the need to upgrade those, you know. And a few years ago, the city council started raising the water rates in order to pay for the improvements that we know, that we all agree we actually need to upgrade these, the infrastructure, or we'll have a Flint, Michigan on our hands, right? No one wants a
God
Flint.
forbid.
So it's a very aging infrastructure. We need to upgrade it. And that's a really big hot button issue. When the rates were increased, it did not land well with residents. People are, and many people are very angry, and I've spoken with many people, and they tell me it's unacceptable. There's two sides of this, of course. It's getting politicized, right? The right side of the argument is saying, hey, you guys should have never raised the rates. Look at them. Look, they raised the rates, the Democrats, right? um, and they're using it as a kind of a political football. um, and they don't actually believe the infrastructure should be upgraded. They think it's probably fine, right?
Wow.
The left is saying, well, yeah, we the left rose the rates, and we needed to, because we don't want to Flint. It's the only option that we had. My position on this is actually not one or the other. Mine is we need to upgrade the infrastructure, but the how matters. The how we did it is disproportionately impacting the working poor, right? And it's not a conservation issue. Um, it's more of these people are working minimum wage jobs. And when you annualize the minimum wage, it comes to about $2,000 below the poverty line, right?
Wow.
And and they're working 2 to 3 jobs just to survive. And I know that, going back to that lived experience, I know how that feels. right? And I know if the rates were raised multiple times over the last few years. The last year was 10%, and that was right in the middle of the pandemic when it went live. Um, and people saw their water bills in the summer, when they were using more water, and it was a big mess. Um, so I don't actually think the Democrats made a bad choice in what they did. I just think that it goes back to having the right perspectives on council. If I was on council and that decision came up, hey, we need to fix the pipes. What do we do? And the city manager and the government said, hey, here are here are the options. What I would have done was say, hey, that's fine, that makes sense, but do more research, right? Because I did a lot of research, Gerard. Just when I just started big on the campaign, and this is only a 7-week campaign so far. Um, I did a lot of research on cities across the country. Many cities are going through what we're going through. They have aging infrastructure, 30, 50 years. What are they doing, right? A lot of them are doing what's called public-private partnerships, where you get a company to buy your assets, they fix the infrastructure, and what you do is you build into the agreement with the company when and how they can raise rates. So you protect the residents from, profit mongering, right? You can protect the residents and have them spread the increases over a longer period of time. So imagine a 1% increase every year versus 10% every year, right? Um, or imagine just some other way of paying for it without raising the rates. There are many ways of paying for it. That doesn't need to be Gerard, your bill is going to go up. There are more creative options that I don't think were considered. So that's my position. It's kind of in the middle of both. So I'm saying we must upgrade the infrastructure, but the how needs to be equitable. That's my entire deal here. It needs to be equitable for
It
everyone.
has to make sense.
It has to make sense.
Yeah. Now, this is kind of piggybacking off of a comment that I seen individual actually leave you on social media. So, what would be
I've
your
gotten
response?
some great comments, man,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
DMs. Really interesting DMs.
Yeah. what what would you say to a potential voter that approaches you like this? No offense, but I'm a Republican. I grew up in a Republican household, and I've always voted Republican. What would be your approach towards a prospective voter?
Well, I would say that city council is nonpartisan, right? And it's supposed to be nonpartisan, right?
Right.
And that's written directly into our city charter. Like the actual charter says, it's a nonpartisan. We shouldn't be declaring Democratic or Republican ideologies at this level. To me, what I would say to that person is, um, I'm a registered Democrat, but that doesn't mean that I won't listen to you. My entire campaign is about solidarity across income, race, gender, etc. That includes politics. Your party, right? I don't care if you're Martian or from Venus, right? If your political party says Venus, Venetian, it doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is what do you, Mr. Resident, think needs to change? I want to hear that so that I can advocate for you, right? And I can advocate whether it's a city issue or state or national issue, right? Because one of the things that we hear often is, well, the city is not responsible for that. That's the county. That's unacceptable. That's lazy. City councilors have the opportunity to advocate. If it's a county issue, like let's say like COVID and health, preparation, that I have the obligation to lobby and advocate, whether it's my commission, the county commissioner, or the state senator, or representatives, or Congress, or our congressmen, and say, hey, we need more help. We need help here. We need to do something different here, and that's what I think is the responsibility of a councilman. So I would say to that person, it's not about party. It's about what needs. It's about solving problems. It's about solving problems.
Yes. Appreciate appreciate that thorough answer, because I know, sometimes, thoughts like this kind of circulate, when it comes to selecting a candidate. Now, what advice would you have, Obi, for young people of color that hope to someday become social agents of change in their communities?
Jump in the deep end. There's a lot, one of the things that I struggle with, and probably all people of color, or any person who's been through any hardship, right, struggles with, is what's called, um, uh, sorry, I'm blanking now. It's called imposter syndrome. Have you heard of that?
No, sir.
Imposter syndrome is this, it's kind of a psychological weakness, right? That tells you, no matter what successes you achieve in your life, you don't feel like you deserve that. You feel like an imposter, like you're in someone else's skin.
Okay.
And a lot of people feel that way when, because we've been, we get discriminated against or oppressed our entire lives, right? So when you actually do achieve something, you don't feel like you really did it.
Yes.
And I think particularly the youth, and particularly BIPOC youth, right? If you're feeling that way, I still feel that way. And I've achieved a lot of great things, right? I've done a lot of great things in my life, but none is as meaningful as what I'm doing right now. I've I've uh, I've led multi-billion-dollar corporations, right? I have my own small business, very successful. I've done a lot of great things. None of that means anything than, relative to what I'm doing now, because what I'm doing now is for community, is for others. And the moment you stop doing things for yourself and start doing things for others is the moment you really achieved what you're meant to be on earth. We're all meant to do something for others, not for ourselves. No matter how much you think you need that next paycheck, or that promotion, or the next car, or whatever you think, whatever that is for you, it's meaningless relative to you jumping in the deep end and doing something for your community. And it doesn't have to be politics. It could be something else. It could be a nonprofit that you're starting to help homelessness, right? It could be some kind of charity, etc. But politics, I'll tell you that if you're thinking about politics, you should be, and you're on the right track, and you are worth it. You're worthy enough. Don't think that you're not worthy. Especially when you start talking to these politicians, you realize very quickly how worthy you are. There is nothing special about them. There's nothing special about a senator or a congressman. They're just like you and me. So I would tell you to just do it. And if you do it and you don't like it, then fine. But you don't want to be 90 years old on your deathbed thinking back on your life and saying, what if, like, why didn't I ever try that? Why couldn't I run for council? Why couldn't I run for, state representative? Why couldn't I try it? So that's the advice, and that's why I'm doing it. I don't want to be that guy on the deathbed saying that to myself and my kids and my grandkids, and the shame of that. And think of the shame of not trying, right? There's a lot more shame in not trying than going for it. So that's my plea to the youth.
Yes, and well said once again, Obi. As you were speaking, everything you said pretty much embodies the spirit behind this youth and mentorship podcast that I have here at a Heavy Brand Podcast. I had a gentleman on the show, Dr. Russell Leday. I had him on the show literally like 6 hours after he was on Good Morning America. That young man, he was working, he was a veteran like myself. He was working security at a hospital, and he ended up becoming a doctor at the same hospital that he was once a security guard at. And, when you said, the advice you gave is just, it really resonates, jump in, don't pigeonhole yourself. And that speaks volumes, because one thing for me to tell, some of our young men and women, hey, I was an immigrant and I served in the military, that's still sort of a traditional route. But for someone like Russell Leday to say, yeah, you can become, you can go from being a security guard to a doctor, or you yourself, Obi, you can go from, having experienced homelessness before out on the East Coast to jumping into the political arena. It can be done. It may not necessarily be as conventional, but it speaks even louder volumes, because guys like you, guys like Dr. Russell Leday, you guys are pioneers in a sense. So that I really, really appreciate you sharing that message tonight.
Especially if you believe it, if you believe in it, like, people don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. What you do simply serves as proof of what you believe, right? So if you talk what you believe, then you attract those who believe what you believe. Because, and I say that because, one of the things that keep you back from kind of jumping in, especially with the imposter syndrome, is the thought of, well, what if no one likes me? The people will believe you because they hear because you're speaking truth to what you believe, and they will be attracted to that. And there's a lot of people who believe what you believe, no matter what that is. Even if you're a right-wing person or a super left-wing person, there are people out there for you, and everyone's looking for community. That's why, to me, city council is so special, because it's the lowest level, is the closest level to the community. And everyone's looking for their own communities. We see it on social media. We see it on various, the Heavy Brand podcast is a community of people, right?
Yes, sir.
Everyone's looking for their own communities because people need that connection. And why can't that be you? Whoever's listening to this, whoever needs the inspiration, that could be you, that leads the pack, that creates their own community of what you believe in.
That's something that needs to be put out there, spoken into existence over and over and over. To build that momentum for our young listeners and our young viewers. Now, stepping aside from from running for city council, what do you do for self-care? What do you do to maintain when you're trying to get away from the daily
What is that?
grind of campaign?
What is self-care? What is this crazy concept that you speak of? Self-care. Oh, well, so I have a daughter. So I love hanging out with my family, my wife and daughter. She's 6 years old. I read often. I write. So I like writing both fiction and nonfiction. It's been a hobby of mine for a while. I write some murder mysteries, so that's kind of fun. Music, of course. Sports. I'm not as good as I used to be, but I love playing sports. Tennis.
What sports? Soccer, buddy? So just tennis. Okay.
I used to play soccer. Yeah. Well, football. Football, Gerard. Football.
Right.
I used to play football. I was a forward. I always played basketball, but I always was terrible, and I'm still terrible at basketball. Tennis, I'm not that great, but I love it. That's the last 5-10 years I've been I just love playing tennis. I'm not great at it, but I just love it. I golf sometimes. Yeah, so kind of a hodgepodge. I love watching TV, movies. I'm a big movie guy. Music.
Now, you said so you write books. Now, let's get deep into a plot. So, what actor would play Obi Ezeadi, and why in the Obi Ezeadi story?
Gerard Namanco. Gerard would be a great actor for Obi, because he knew I'm Igbo, so you already have some history to background. I don't know what actor. That's a good question.
It could be an actor that might not necessarily look anywhere remotely close to you, but maybe you respect the way they play each role. You know how some actors, when you see them in one movie, you don't picture them from their previous role. You just see them for who they are in that specific movie, in that moment in time.
You know, Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh, okay.
His role in Joker, the latest Joker movie,
Mm.
he has the ability of like just looking at him in certain scenes, it looks like he's been through some shit,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And at the same time, he's confident and he uses his experience for whatever he's doing. It's like he has levels in his expressions. Um, and I think that's important because I have some background, right? That I would want the actor to be able to portray, and he can portray things without saying any words. You know, he just certain looks that shows, oh, he's been through some things.
And you know what's interesting? He has been through a lot. If I remember correctly, he had a brother that was also a child actor that I believe committed suicide, River Phoenix, back in the day. So he's definitely been through some things in his life. It's interesting that you could pick that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Besides that, maybe Barack Obama if he acts.
Okay.
I'd love him to play me one day. I like the voice, you know, he's got the voice.
It gives him that extra aura.
Right. I don't have that voice, so his voice will cover all my weaknesses throughout my life.
Obi, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come on this podcast. You know, we've been really blessed on this podcast to continue getting quality guests, whether it's a current pro athlete, retired pro athlete, a coach, a community leader, an activist. You know, you're part of the long line of blessings that continues to be bestowed upon this podcast. Thank you very much for coming on Heavy Brand Podcast. I look forward to sharing this episode on our Facebook podcast page, Heavy Brand Podcast. Thank you so much, Obi.
No, and thank you, Gerard. What you're doing with this podcast, you know, I wish we could duplicate you, right? 50 times over, have 50 different heavy brands across the world because it's so important. And you're meeting people where they are. You know, it goes back to outreach, right? You're identifying people to interview, and the way you're promoting it and the issues, the questions that you ask are what people care about, you know, and that's just great job, man.
Appreciate you. Well, I got a feeling our paths will cross eventually, so we shall meet again, my friend.
That's right. Thank you so much.
Peace.
I'll see you.